What's going on, everybody? This is Mr. Welcome back to OverTakes, and today we are going to be doing our Week 6 preview, which is Week 1 of the Midseason Madness qualifiers. Also had a bunch of stuff drop on Sunday for Overwatch 2, including new hero and a bunch of other news about that. So we got a lot to talk about today, so we're going to dive into it. But first, I want to thank everybody for joining me. All of you guys have been with me for 1 day or 5 years. Thank you very, very much. If you're new, just checking me out, thanks a lot. I do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week, depending on what's going on. And sometimes I break into a little Overwatch 2 or Overwatch the game news if it seems relevant or, interesting. Or obviously we got the beta going on, and a lot of stuff dropped yesterday, which we're going to get into before we dive into some Overwatch League stuff. And then preview Week 6, and then do pick'ems and all that kind of stuff. All right, so let's talk about what happened as far as Overwatch 2 goes. So at the Xbox Bethesda Game Showcase for 2022, they dropped a whole bunch of stuff. So we got trailer video for the Junker Queen. They're also going free to play, and the game will be dropping on October 4th. So we have a date of when they're going to be releasing the full game, or at least, as far as I'm thinking, the PvP. So that's great. We got a new hero, potentially a second new hero. If you watch the trailer, there's towards the end the Fox Girl, and they even hint at it on a couple of things. A second hero's coming and all that. But I looked at the trailer for the Junker Queen, and she seems pretty damn awesome. Yeah, and they're gonna drop it somewhere in the last stage of, or last tournament cycle. I think it's like 2 weeks before we get to the play-ins and the playoffs and the grand finals and all that. My estimation on that whole thing is especially with the Overwatch leagues, they're going to be playing on the full roster, full maps, all that stuff in that last stage. I don't know what that's going to do to the playoffs, because you know how that goes. The last stage, you get a patch drop. It's possible we could, with new heroes being overpowered and all that kind of stuff. Who knows what's going to happen with that? The Junker Queen looked pretty cool. Obviously, she's a tank. She's got a bunch of different abilities. Her aesthetic is pretty cool. The whole Junker thing with the Thunderdome kind of vibe that they have going on there in the video. The hero looked cool. I like the free-to-play thing. I've been for it for a long time. I think it's necessary in the PvP world of 2022. Obviously, they're changing their monetization and all that kind of stuff. So you probably have the typical battle pass, especially now that it's going to be phasing into Microsoft, what they do with Halo, which is, you have the battle pass, you have skins that you can acquire and purchase and all that kind of stuff. And then any kind of PvE campaign, any of that kind of stuff is a DLC that you have to pay for, which I'm fine with. If I want to play PvE and try that and do that whole thing, I'm willing to pay for it. It's a whole separate game. It's not the same as Overwatch, and just like it's not the same as like Halo. Yeah, you have the same weaponry and that kind of thing, but it's not the same experience. It's a whole different thing. So I'm all for that. And obviously there's going to be skins and all that kind of stuff that come out of that you can acquire from if you look at other games. They're not dumb now. As far as that stuff goes, it's nice to see an actual date for the release, just to finally get the whole thing. You can see like the aesthetics have changed on a lot of the characters. They're updating the engine, all that kind of stuff. They dropped some kind of on Overwatch 1, they did some kind of experimental patch where they're kind of implementing some of the Overwatch 2 like ability changes and buffs and nerfs and all that kind of stuff. But as far as all the other info, we're going to get it before these matches that we're going to talk about today start, which is obviously planned. The next phase of the closed beta and all that, which I think they're going to go closed beta after Midseason Madness, the next one, and then possibly leave it open. I don't know. There's potential for that, especially they're calling it early access, unless that's their open beta on the 4th, where they just put it free to play, open it wide open, and they continue with it as a beta, and then quote unquote launch the game when they get to the point where the PvE is finished. That's what I'm thinking right now. But I'm really excited to see what the Junker Queen's all about. Her abilities look pretty cool. She seems like a combo of Orisa and Doomfist, which is okay. There's some mobility. It looks like there's some stuns, but, tank, they're allowed in this iteration of Overwatch. So, and we'll have to see what else they have in store and as far as her kit, because they'll talk about that if you're watching this on Thursday, later today, possibly, or before you watch this, before the matches start. But yeah, that's fantastic news. I'm ready. I'm hyped for all of this. I played in the last beta. I thought it was fantastic. I went in there with the expectations of it as a beta, unlike some people who thought it was a finished game and posted all their garbage all over the internet. Whatever. That's their opinion. And it's obvious to me that it's to get ratings and whatnot. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So we had that. Now let's get into, and we'll talk more about that. If anything really major happens on Thursday, I'll post something up on Friday or Saturday, somewhere in there. We'll talk a little bit more about that. If you guys, I love talking about the Overwatch game itself too, but I'm not as good as some of the other guys like Fredo and Stylosa. They know way more about this stuff than I do. But it's just fun to talk about it. Anyway, let's talk week 6, shall we? All right. We're coming in on the patch that was in the last phase of the beta, where we had nerfs to Soldier. I believe Ana got a nerf. Zen got the kick. You got the Mercy super jump. All that kind of stuff that went in there at the end of that beta. I think there was maybe something to Bastion. I don't think Bastion's going to be relevant. Yeah, people cheese it a little bit, play him at end of points, or, I think Proper did it. I think he was just trying to get as many kills on as many different heroes as he could against Paris. I think it was Paris. Or Vancouver, I'm sorry. That's irrelevant. The Ana one's big, the Soldier one's big. Potentially the Mercy one's big. It depends on what happens. Now, I think you're going to see some Soldier to start, just because he does a lot of reliable damage anyway, and still less shields. So he's still going to be viable. I don't know if he's going to be used as much. We saw some things happen towards the end of the playoffs and things like that, or I'm sorry, playoffs, tournament cycle, especially in the qualifiers. We saw some Hanzo getting used. We saw it in the tournament too. We were seeing a little bit of Rush. We're seeing a little bit more diversity of comps than just going Doomfist, Winston, Zarya. We're seeing people not copying, but doing that style of Rush that London is using as basically their main comp, which works in situations, and I like the situational stuff that's starting to happen. Okay, you're running Rhine, we're going to run Doom, or we're going to run Monkey. If you're running Monkey, we're going to run Zarya, or we might run Rhine. There's a lot of rock, paper, scissoring. I like it when it's not like, we've talked about this though, when it's not if you don't play double shield or you don't play goats, you get L. I hate that. I hate when it's mirror match all the time. I like the counterplay, and I think we're going to get some of that. Things we might see come into the meta. I've heard Sigma, which makes sense on certain maps, escort maps where you can use a Widow or a Hanzo, and you at least have some kind of shield mobility. Yeah, you can use Winston's bubble to kind of block sight lines and things like that. That's helpful. His bubble has a lot more health now in Overwatch 2, so it does help out. But I like Sigma's mobility and being able to kind of cut off sight lines, provide protection. It's going to be interesting to see where the tank meta kind of goes. Now, with the nerf to Ana's grenade, you might see a little less Ana. We started to see some BAP and some other things. You might see a little Zen. The kick does help. I don't know if it's going to make that big of a difference. Yeah, these guys will be good with it, and they'll be able to use it a lot more effectively than you or I, or at least I can. Yeah, you can use it. Will it be big enough to support a Zen meta, which can be helpful? I like Zen's kit. It's just he's too slow in this. He just gets murdered. And unless you're cracked and you can hit those right clicks, volleys, and just annihilate Tracers and Genjis coming after you, or Doomfist or whatever. But the reliability of some of the things in his kit are just really, really good. Discord, Transcendence. It's one of the better support kits in my opinion. But the overall quality of life that you have playing Zen before this kick thing was terrible. And I think it might help a little bit. So you're going to see some of these guys probably play it. I don't know how much, though. BAP and Anna provide so much utility otherwise on both sides of the spectrum. And then you get guys like Shu. Shu is just I think Costa said he had some kind of crazy Li Jiang kill everybody spree that Shu does. He said that Shu is the most potent DPS on BAP in the server, and he wasn't wrong. It just, certain guys can use that to their advantage. I mean, yeah, they can do that with Zenyatta too, but you have Immortality Field, you have a couple, the amount of healing and sustain and stuff like that. It's going to be quite interesting to see where all of this heads meta-wise. First, let's run down the schedule, then we're going to talk a little bit about players and teams. I got 2 key matches, big matches this week. We have no APAC until next week. So we're all NA from Thursday to Sunday. So let's talk first the schedule. We'll just run it down real quick and we'll go from there. All right, I'm sorry, it's week 7. Week 6 was last week that was empty. I hate when they do that. Just give me when there's matches, number the damn thing. Anyway, because it's not technically a week when you're not playing matches, but it is a week physically. But anyway, semantics and all that kind of stuff. Let's just hit the schedule. So Thursday, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Florida Mayhem taking on the London Spitfire. Thursday, continuing on, we have Dallas taking on San Francisco after that. Final match on Thursday, we have New York taking on the Washington Justice. On to Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Toronto Defiant taking on the London Spitfire, followed by the Atlanta Reign taking on the Boston Uprising, and finishing off with the Los Angeles Gladiators taking on the Vancouver Titans. Saturday, we had the Houston Outlaws taking on the Washington Justice, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, followed by the LA Gladiators taking on the Paris Eternal, and then finishing up with the Dallas Fuel and the Atlanta Reign. On to Sunday, the last day of week 7, we have the Toronto Defiant taking on the Florida Mayhem, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, followed by the Boston Uprising taking on San Francisco Shock, then the New York Excelsior taking on the Paris Eternal, this year's first big toilet bowl match. Second, technically, kind of. Potential Fiesta match, 6 p.m. Sunday. Stay tuned for that. Final match on Sunday and for the week, we have the Vancouver Titans taking on the Houston Outlaws. All right, so who are we watching this week as far as teams we want to keep an eye on? Me personally, I'm looking at some of the mid-pack teams to see how they fare in the next round where things have changed, to see how they adapt. Meaning Florida, Toronto, and Houston. I'm looking at these teams to see, because they're kind of close. You could throw Washington in there, which is my go-to line now, apparently. You could throw the Washington Justice in there. We want to be inclusive. Let's include the team that makes you mauled. All right, sure, the Justice. They're to see how they have adjusted in the week between the kickoff clash and these qualifiers. I want to see where they've gone, if they've improved on some things, if they changed any of their comps up, if they're ready for a new meta, and if they can switch and be viable in that week, being versatile. Florida and Toronto, I think, are closer, and we're going to see them play later on in the week. They're closer skill-wise. I don't know what's going on mentally with Toronto. Florida seems pretty good. They had a good tournament as far as what you would expect their roster to do. They didn't beat the Reign. They gave them a decent enough game. They won a game in the lower bracket. They beat Washington, who at that point you kind of thought maybe better, maybe on their level. You don't know. I think that they could be okay. I'm a little worried if you get Majed on it. I don't know what his other heroes are like as far as Zen or BAP. I think their DPS are fine. Exy's in Florida now, so you also have that option in there as well. And I don't know if we see any of Adam, if they start running a Ryan Rush, if that becomes a thing, because he plays main tank. And if it becomes like a Ryan or Winston scenario, what they end up doing there. As far as Houston goes, I want to see what Piggy can do. You're not going to be able to lean on the Dante Doomfist all year. I mean, maybe you try it. Maybe you see where it goes. he can operate like a Winston-type dive hero, but it seems like the moving parts around it are a little different, and they're easily countered a little bit more than Winston, to me. And like I said when I was talking about Houston as far as in the power rankings, Sigma comes into play. Piggy's pretty decent on Sigma. You might be okay. He seemed a little lost at times. Also, it kind of telegraphs when you have a guy like Dante not playing any other tank. So he's in for Doom. And then Piggy's in for, at this point, playing the other tanks. Whether it's Zarya, Winston, whatever, Reinhardt, you name the tank, he's your other guy. So their DPS played great. I think Merritt is low-key one of the best DPS in the West. A lot of people aren't talking about him. You're seeing big flashy things from Pelican, and you see Proper, Kevster. I think Merritt should be up there. And Pelican had a couple of clutch moments in the tournament, so I think they're fine there. I think they're fine on the support line, too. They just need to get a couple of things worked out, tank-wise. As far as the Justice, I've talked enough about the Justice. I don't feel like talking about them anymore. You don't know what you're going to get. The Justice are like the worst box of chocolates ever. If you want to go Forrest Gump. But anyway, they have a lot to prove in this. They need to get their stuff consistent. They have the talent. They should be placing higher in things and performing better, but they just don't. We've talked enough about them at nauseum, it seems like, but they need to pick it up and be consistent. Toronto has proved me wrong to an extent, but you don't know what's going on there either. I think they might have a little bit of infusion of energy and focus with Moby Dick coming on and KDG leaving. That usually happens when a coach leaves, especially under circumstances where people don't like him and things like that. You get a boost of energy and good vibes and all that, and you play better. That being said, I still fall back on what I've said before. I think that these guys are somewhat past what they were. Your hot buzz. I think Hisu's, they're putting a lot of weight on Hisu's shoulders that doesn't need to be put there. He's not that kind of player. Finale and Although I'm kind of on the fence about, but the only thing I can say is their support line's fantastic, and it will carry them a little bit more with Chorong and Twilight. I think that's their right now their big shining spot, and I think they've in fact done things that I said I don't know if they could do in the beginning of the year, and that's sustain team fights and hide some of their weaknesses is what I'm getting at. With Toronto, I want to see that energy. I want to see if they come back on the up after the whole KDG thing has been taken care of. When an organization goes on the side of the players, sometimes the players take that to heart and they maybe play a little bit harder, focus a little bit more. So we'll see what happens. But those are the teams that I'm looking at. Now, players, I want to see what a couple of guys can do as far as coming back into the swing after the tournament. Maybe not necessarily having a bad tournament, but maybe getting exposed, called out, whatever, a little bit. And some of the guys that were really good. Like, I want to see where Kevster's at, because I just love watching the dude play. He's amazing. I want to see, and one of the things I'm looking at is Violent. I want to see if him and Krusty decide, well, maybe not him, Krusty decides to go into maybe a double support meta with Baptiste or Anna and possibly Zen or a Moira. They tried that a couple times. I'm not convinced on Moira necessarily. She's more of a main support, I guess. But I want to see what they do with that, because his Lucio is up and down. He's getting better, but he also has moments where he ajaxes shit and, the typical guy who hasn't spent his whole career playing a character like Lucio. So I'm looking at that. And I'm also going to throw this out there. I'm going to be watching Hottie. Not just because he's been playing good. I want to see if they have worked a couple of more comps in with him. As far as maybe doing a little bit more Winston instead of just leaning on that Ryan Rush. I want to see what he's got in store. Because his Reinhardt, you also got to take into consideration that he's playing Reinhardt better than anybody expected, really. I knew he was decent enough. He got cut and then brought back, so maybe that revitalized him and got him more into the focus. I don't know. I want to watch his either Reinhardt and see what they put him on otherwise. Or if they lean into a little bit of Poco. I would like to see if that happens. I'm not sure it will, but you could see that if we start hard shifting into a Sigma meta or more of the Zarya kind of comps and things like that. You might see some Poco. But those are the players I got my eye on this week. Now let's hit the 2 matches that we got, and we're going to talk, fairly quickly about these. We got Dallas and San Francisco. This is a rematch. Dallas kind of smoked them in the tournament, but Dallas is leaning on that Zarya comp, and as far as we know, it's still viable. So why not run it still with Hanbin? Hopefully Fearless got some of the stuff worked out. He looked kind of shaky at times. Their dive did not look good. I would like to see them tighten that up, especially against a team like the Shock who can punish you when you're playing that Zarya comp. They know what to do to stop it. It's just they couldn't stop it in the tournament. I think there was a lot of factors going in there. First big event, first elimination match for some of these young guys in the Overwatch League. So I think some of the pressure might have got to them. Much like we talked about Dallas in the first game of the season, I think some of that stuff happened with the Shock. As far as the Shock go, I like what Kaluj brings, and his versatility is pretty damn good. But can he play if they need him to play some of the other heroes outside of, the Winston? I mean, he is a off-tank, so at least he provides a decent Winston on that. Can he do the Reinhardt decently? Can he... Maybe they can lean more into some of the Zarya comps, or how's his Sigma going to be on a pro level? I want to see that stuff from them. It's going to be really interesting to see how it comes out right off the rip. I mean, we have one match before it, the Mayhem and the Spitfire, but they're 2 teams that kind of have their own style. They're not trying, at least in the kickoff clash, they weren't trying to be super versatile. Maybe the Mayhem a little bit more towards the end. This is kind of the first match we're going to see the potential for what, the hot new meta could be, what teams are trying out. And these are 2 really good teams. And San Francisco's versatile. Dallas can be versatile. I think they just need to work on some stuff. They have the players to do it. Let's go tail of the tape on this. Tanks. I have to lean on the Hanbin and Fearless. More for Hanbin being as solid as he's been throughout the entire tournament. Mostly on Zarya, but he's pretty dominant on that hero. Kaluj isn't far off of a solo tank versus the combined tanks of Dallas. I like what he does. I think he's going to get better and better as the year goes on. Maybe expand his hero pool a little bit more here and there. But I just think he's a little bit short of what Hanbin brings to the table. I think he could keep up with Fearless and stuff like that, but that was last stage. Don't know about this stage. All right, so let's talk supports. We have Violet and Finn versus Chio and Fielder. I'm going to lean on Dallas on this one. I like Chio has brought a lot to the table. He's a way better Lucio, obviously, than Violet. He's looking really good, kind of going under the radar a little bit across at least what I've noticed across the league. A lot of guys are getting talked about more, your funny Astros, etc. Even Lastro on Houston is getting a little bit more in the conversation with things. OG over in Atlanta. But I think that Chio is performing really, really well. And I think Finn might have a slight edge on Fielder, but it's hard to say what they're going to run, and being a new tournament cycle and all that. But I'm going to lean on Dallas. Finn maybe has a slight edge, but Chio's edge over Violet, I think, is a lot greater. If Violet's running main support, in that scenario where he's playing Lucio or Mercy or whatever, and you have Finn taking care of the, we don't have a double support meta is what I'm getting at. DPS, Proper, Kilo, and Sam, Doha, Sparkle, and Edison. I'm going to lean on San Francisco in this one. I like these rookies. They are fantastic. They are dynamic. They make big plays a lot. But Dallas's DPS are no slouch either. Doha, Edison, and Sparkle are fantastic. All 3 of them are great. Edison made some big plays in the playoffs. So did Sparkle, who they were running quite a bit. Doha got some time. He looked good too. I think it's an edge, but it's a slight edge going to San Francisco in that. So what do I think the outcome's going to be? I did give the edge to San Francisco in 2 of the 3 categories, But overall, and this could be recency bias, you could be whatever you want to call it, I'm taking Dallas in this in a close 3-1. I think it has the potential to go 5. The Shock could win this too. I just feel that Dallas right now is a more seasoned and complete team, top to bottom. If Fearless gets some of the stuff worked out that he had going on in the first stage, they're going to be very, very hard to beat again. Same thing with the Shock. They're going to be very tough for some of these teams to beat, especially mid-pack and down. I think they're just slightly, not more than slightly. We had a tier break for a reason between the Atlanta, San Francisco area down to the Toronto, Houston, Mayhem, Justice area. Most of those teams, I think where they're going to get their big challenges is when they have to play the Fuels and the Gladiators and teams like the Reign. That's where, I mean, they're a big challenge for everybody, but I'm not saying that they're a gatekeeper to the top, but it kind of feels like it from last stage, the way they played. They did come back and beat the Gladiators, and I'm not holding anything against that. The Gladiators are the best team in the league, so they prove that they can beat these teams. To me, right now, they don't have enough to beat Dallas. It's weird saying that at the end of a sentence about the Gladiators, but this is post-tournament, and this is where I think this is going to go. Dallas, close 3-1. On to the next match, where we are going to see what happens in this crazy mid-pack. So on Sunday, first match of Sunday, we have the Mayhem taking on the Defiant. I think this is going to be an insanely good match. You have the Defiant who just got they didn't get their coach got fired. They're moving forward in a different direction. A coach that knows them on the team too in Moby Dick. Their players have been playing better than I expected this year. I can actually say that for both teams. The Mayhem are playing better than I expected too. But the Defiant, I think they look better when Muse is in there, and if they get him going back in the direction he was before all this turmoil and drama and whatnot and what have you happened, and same thing with Finale, they'll be good. Their supports are fantastic. They make this team move. They are the key to the Defiant winning anything right now. Hisu and Finale, or Hisu and Although, is decent enough. But when they're empowered by Twilight and Chorong, that's when it gets scary. That's when those guys look good. Same thing with their tanks. Hotba and Muse look better when the supports play at the level that we know they can play. Mayhem, they came off a fair enough showing in the tournament. Some of their stuff was exposed. Majed's a little too aggressive at times. Someone had some issues. But I think that these guys are learning and they're moving on and they're doing better every week. They are getting some synergy with each other. You can see it. You have Exy into the mix now. I like where they're going. I think this is going to be a big tournament for the Mayhem. To see if they just didn't do something where they beat a couple of teams maybe they should have beaten that were not great and got themselves into the tournament. It's going to be hard not to get yourself into the tournament with 8 teams going. But this is a big thing for them. Big match to prove that, maybe they're a little bit better than some of the mid-pack teams. Checkmate has been playing decently enough. I like what someone's done. We could see Adam maybe. I don't know. If we get into a main tank meta, you might see him. Like a Rhine, a hard Rhine meta or something like that. You might see some Adam. Don't know. It's hard to see what's in store for us coming up. Because someone's... he ran Rhine a couple times. It was not the greatest. That's one thing that the Defiant have. You could put Muse in there and he can run your Winston and your Rhine comps, and then you have Hotba, who's versatile on all of the off-tank heroes. So as much as I say that they're like leftovers, they're still good. And then you have that support line powering them. So let's do a tail of the tape. Okay, tanks. Muse and Hotba versus someone in Adam, potentially. I call this a draw right now. Someone's learning. I think Muse, we know what Muse is, and we know what Hotba is. Hotba is. They're decent to above average at times as far as tanks go, and I feel the same way about the Mayhem. I haven't seen Adam yet, but someone has been playing better than advertised to me. Supports. I'm just going to throw it out there. Toronto. Choron, Twilight versus Majed and Onimo, who are both playing really well, but they're not playing on the level or the potential level that you could get from a Twilight and a Choron. DPS, Eggsy, Hydron, and Checkmate versus Hisu, Finale, and Although. I'm going to go with the Mayhem in this. Mostly with the addition of Eggsy. I think that provides a lot. Yeah, he didn't play last year. But you got a good hard hit scan guy to come in and do your business on any of the maps that you need that, or if the meta shifts into that. You have Hydron and you have Checkmate playing any other heroes that you need. Checkmate doing the projectile stuff. I think it's going to work out pretty well for them. I've said my piece on Toronto's DPS. I think Hisu's good. He has pop-off potential and pop-off moments. Same thing goes with Finale. And although I just don't think that they're as good consistently as what the Mayhem DPS players can provide. How do I see this going? Guys, you know me. I'm not picking against the Mayhem in a match like this. I take my losses all the time. I think that these teams are very, very close. Very, very even right now. The supports for Toronto are better, but I'm going to go against my conventional wisdom, and I'm going to take the Mayhem in a 3-2 to beat the Defiant. Actually, it's not against my conventional wisdom. I'm not using my head in this one. I'm going with the Mayhem. How's that? 3-2. I feel like it's very even. It could go either way. I think it's going to be a great match, too. When you have teams evenly matched like that, I think it's fantastic. And it'll provide us a little bit of a where these teams are at kind of moment, too. I think it's going to be great. All right. So we got the two key matches out of the way. We're going to wrap the show up with the pick'ems. So let's get into that. Week 7. Here we go. We're going to start off Thursday, June 16th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mayhem taking on the London Spitfire. I have the Mayhem 3-2. Next match on the docket, we have the San Francisco Shock taking on Dallas Fuel. We talked about that one. I'm going to take the Fuel 3-1. Final match of Thursday, Washington Justice taking on the New York Excelsior. I have the Washington Justice winning that 3-1. On to Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. London Spitfire taking on Toronto Defiant. I have Toronto winning 3-2. Next match on Friday, Reign taking on the Boston Uprising. I have the Reign winning 3-0. Final match of Friday, LA Gladiators taking on Vancouver Titans. I have the Gladiators 3-0. On to Saturday, where we start off the day 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as usual. Houston Outlaws taking on the Washington Justice. I have Houston winning 3-1. Next match, Gladiators taking on Paris Eternal. Gladiators 3-0. Final match of Saturday, which was another big one we could have talked about, Dallas Fuel and the Atlanta Reign. I have Dallas winning 3-1. Now to the final day of Week 7 on Sunday. Florida Mayhem taking on the Toronto Defiant at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We talked about this one earlier as well. I have Mayhem 3-2. Next match, San Francisco Shock taking on Boston Uprising. I have San Francisco winning 3-0. Next match on Sunday, we have Paris Eternal taking on New York Excelsior. I have Paris winning 3-2 in a clown fiesta. Not an all-time one yet to be determined, actually, on that. But we're going to call it a fiesta. Final match of the week. Week 7 in the Overwatch League, we have the Houston Outlaws taking on the Vancouver Titans. I have Houston winning 3-1. I gave Vancouver a map. I don't know why. I just felt like they deserved a map. Anyway, that's going to be my pick'ems for Week 7. My overall record for at least the regular season. I've been throwing the tournaments in there because it gets all screwed up. As far as if you lose one match, it doesn't let you go back and re-predict. So, regular season, we're going with. I'm 31-9 going into this week, but that's going to do it, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you once again for all of your support. Everybody who's been subscribed to the channel for 1 day or for 5 years, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it, guys. If you're new and you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you very much. If you could hit a like, hit a subscribe, that would be great. All the YouTube jazz helps me out in the algorithms and all that. We get more people in. We talk more Overwatch League. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe. Have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you on the next one.